What's your name? Spirit? Jeff? Bob? Fred? Hello everyone and welcome to another spooky Halloween video this season. In this video, we're going to be talking about how you can connect to spirits and get names. So often when we're trying to connect with like spirits in a space, or we're connecting to a client and we're trying to see who we're talking to, it's helpful to have a name. And there's a ton of different techniques that you can use to try to get that to come through. So welcome. If you are new here, my name is Lauren. I'm a psychic medium and a psychic development coach. I like to help people strengthen their psychic abilities through tools and techniques. And today we are really crediting this video to the Patreon group. Thank you to all my Patreon members. I have for the longest time set the intention that I suck at getting names. If you've had a reading from me, you've probably heard me say that. But no more. I am now going to confidently move forward and say that I'm trying to get better at names. However, in our Patreon group, we did a practice night completely dedicated to trying to understand and receive names from spirits. So a lot of the techniques that we found and discovered together in that group are going to be in today's video. So some of this was prior knowledge, but a lot of this goes out to you guys. So thank you so much. And if you want to join that group, we do get together once a month to practice reading each other. And the link for that is down below. Now, although in this video, I'm going to talk about it in context of trying to connect with spirit, people who have passed, this can apply to other areas. Like if you're trying to find out the name of a spirit guide, this works. If you are trying to read your client and they want to know who their birth parents are, occasionally that happens, and you can use these techniques to try to get those names. Now, the first thing that I want to start out with is the most important thing, and that is names don't matter. Personality is always going to be much easier to connect to. So if you are trying to connect to a spirit and you're just so focused on trying to get a name, you might get a name, but what if you're wrong, right? It's a lot more helpful to your client, to yourself, to pick up on the spirit's personality. That way, if that spirit shows up again, you have like this feeling, this knowing of like who they are, what they're like, what they talk like. So even if the name isn't correct, you're able to connect to the personality. Also, if you're reading for somebody else and you're trying to differentiate between many of their loved ones in spirit, and you're just not getting a name, that happens. And so what you want to have instead is like this backup of, okay, I'm going to go to the personality, because when I'm trying to describe the spirit to the person that I'm reading, I describe their personality. And that's a lot easier for somebody to connect to than maybe just a name that's wrong. So if I say, okay, I'm connecting to a male energy and he feels funny, he feels like life of the party, he also feels very pushy, maybe said a lot of things he shouldn't have said, really like sports, I don't know, I'm just making this up, like that's a lot more to go off of than just like Jeff or Bob or something like that. Often it's just easier to describe how a spirit looks, how they feel, what their personality is like, maybe some of their history. So I always want to encourage you to have that as a backup. Do that always, because then you're going to get a lot more information if you're feeling like you're stuck on a name. So personality first, try to always remember and stick to that. However, let's pretend you're trying to get a name. You're trying to flex those abilities and you're trying to just, increase your skills and see if you can't get those names to come through. Ultimately, what I want you to do is try to remove your bias as much as possible. Try not to assume a name based on, for example, if we're reading a client, like your client's race, their name, their ethnicity. Like it's really easy to make the assumption, oh, I'm looking at this person, I'm making a judgment about who they are. Maybe their parents couldn't possibly have this name. You could be reading somebody, for example, and you could be looking at their last name, or you could be looking at their location and making assumptions about the names and the family members that they might have around them that might be totally false. And this totally happened in our Patreon group. Like we were like, oh, well, here's this person. I just assumed that, they wouldn't have anybody coming through. And then you'd find out that somebody was adopted or somebody married somebody else that was from a completely different country. So like point being, you have to really wipe the slate clean, be open to anything that can come through. Try not to judge the person that you're reading or the situation just that you're reading, and not assume or use your analytical mind to guess those psychic names. We always want it to come from an intuitive source. So jumping into the techniques, the first technique you can do, just ask. Ask the spirit, connect to their energy, say, what is your name? And expect a first name. You can also just purely ask for a last name, or you can expect a full name. I find that starting out smaller is always simpler. And using your clairs, you should be able to hear, see, feel the answer to this question. Now with this, you can specifically use a clair to try to connect and receive that name. So whereas before I'm saying, okay, just ask and receive through any clair, you can also do it instead with choosing a clair and then asking the question. So for example, if you are saying, show me your name, I want to see it visually, I'm choosing clairvoyance up front. I'm saying, hey, show it to me. I want to see it written out in front of me, in my mind's eye. Or I want to see it in my space. Sometimes that happens where you're looking around and I look at the moon and I'm like, oh, maybe their name is Luna or something. I don't know. I found that a lot of the students in our group really connected with using clairsentience, where they moved their physical energy to the spirit. They sat with the spirit for a while and then asked the question, what's your name? And it almost helped them receive that name a lot easier because they sat with their clairsentience first. And the biggest thing here is you can't like doubt yourself. You got to go with the first thing that comes through sometimes. And you have to be willing to be wrong. It might be wrong and that's okay, but that's how you flex that muscle and practice. So the next technique that I would try, if that one is not working for you, is to ask for like the first letter of their first name or first letter of their last name. So that way we're just focusing on something a little bit less. We're just doing one of 26 letters, right? And that might help you to narrow it down, especially if you're connecting with somebody who might already know their family member in spirit's name. Now, the way that works best for me, not saying it's going to work for everybody because everybody's different, but the way that works best for me is to sound it out. Like instead of worrying about the spelling or seeing it, I like ask spirit to like give it to me clairaudiently, and I want to hear it. I want to sound it out. So can I get an example? So maybe at first I'm hearing like shh, like that syllable, shh. And then I'm like, okay, give me more. What's the rest of this name? And then I hear shh. I just heard shark. But maybe instead you hear Sharon or Charlize or something. And you might sound it out in bits and pieces. And like, I'm thinking of that, like, is it like that drunk, there's like a card game where they spell out the words all funny and you have to say it out loud and then try to guess what you're saying out loud. I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about, but essentially instead of just focusing on getting it exactly right, you're asking your guides to like help you sound it out. And then maybe you'll be able to piece it together. I found that almost worked better for me because sometimes I would get the end of a name before I'd get the beginning piece of the name. And it just helped me get out of my head and worrying about like being perfect with it. Another thing you can do, another technique, is ask spirit, how many syllables is it? You know, you can hear the number of syllables. You might hear like do, do, do. So like for a name, Lauren, right? That's 2 syllables, Lauren. You might just hear like the number of syllables and you might be able to convey that to the person that you're reading. Like, I feel like it's one like syllable, one name, like a Bob or a Sue or something like that. I found that a lot of these techniques you can build on. So you might start with like how many syllables are there, and then you might start to like sound it out, and then you might get to like a full name. Automatic writing is another great technique. When you really get into that zone as you're writing, as you're connecting to the spirit, maybe first you're just trying to get a sense of their personality, and when you feel like it's kind of in that flow and it's becoming more psychic and less like your own thoughts, you know, you can ask like, spirit, what's your name? Spirit, what's your name? You can even like write that out and then see what comes through as you're writing. The next technique that a few of us found useful in the Patreon group was we looked for things in our physical environment. We set the intention that we would kind of like be drawn to something in our physical environment. I think somebody used the idea of like a keyboard, computer keyboard, and being drawn to like a letter. Every time I did that, it didn't work for me, but when I like used my physical environment, Like I might see my oracle cards over here to my right and I'm drawn to the letter M, you know, and I could start from there. Or maybe I'm drawn to like my wreath that's over here behind this camera. And, you know, I say, okay, maybe it starts with a letter W. A lot of these techniques really forces you to rely on your clairs. And if you're new to me, new to that, you know, just know that I have my psychic development courses. I go over the clairs, I go over techniques for strengthening these. But what I want you to come to last is the tools, because I feel like people usually start with the tools. They want to pull out the Ouija board, they want to pull out the pendulum, they want to pull out the cards. It's fine, it's great, you can do whatever you want, but I'm always going to encourage you to start with your psychic abilities, the clairs, how that information comes through to you using your mental abilities. However, if you're really stuck, you can use tools. There's a lot of people that like use Scrabble pieces and pull them out, and you can like literally just have names in a bag, or sorry, letters in a bag and pull that out. You can absolutely use tarot cards. Again, set the intention. I am trying to pick up a name, like give me a card where the first letter is the first name of this same person. I'm gonna do it for funsies right now. Spirit, which one of my family members is here with me? Again, setting that intention that whoever is with me starts with that same letter. So I have the letter B. I'm like trying to remember, do I have a family member in spirit that starts with the letter B? Oh, I do have one, Bob. I knew that. Sorry, I have a grandpa named Bob. That's why I always say Bob. I always say Bob in all my video examples. You guys, some people have like joked about that in the comments. They're like, hey, my name's Bob. It's really because I'm not very creative at coming up with names in the middle of videos, but I just realized I totally have a Bob. But he's my great grandpa. Anyways, now you can absolutely also use the alphabet. Like you can literally print out a piece of paper and be drawn to a certain letter, or you know, even like if you I'm coming up with this right now. Print out the alphabet and like draw on top of it and be led to certain like letters, like scribble, automatic writing. Obviously you can use a spirit board, you can use a Ouija board as well. I'm not a fan of the Ouija board using it yourself. I think it can be helpful if you have 2 or more people, but I think by yourself it can be a little bit challenging. You can also use a pendulum board that has all of the letters on it as well. So lots of different tools that you can use. I'm sure there's even more that you could come up with. If you have any ideas, please leave them down below. But again, I would come to those tools last, mostly because the more you strengthen your psychic abilities, the more reliable they're going to be. And it's just gonna be a lot faster than using a lot of those tools in the long run. I understand that when you're starting out, it can be super frustrating because when your abilities aren't there and you're trying to get things to come through, you're just like, oh my God. So those are the techniques that we all came up with as a group. Again, thank you to my Patreon members. A lot of this, again, was on you guys for helping me stretch myself as a coach and figure out ways that we could help people connect to names more. Again, though, try to remember that it's okay to be wrong. Be willing to be wrong. I think that when you put too much pressure on getting it perfect, it doesn't come through. And that's what I did for the longest time, was I set the intention that I sucked at it. I said that I'm never gonna get better at it, and then I never got it because I was trying to be perfect and I was trying to get it right on the first go. But I realized that the more I would just throw out names and be totally okay if I got it wrong, and I just kept moving on and didn't get emotionally attached to the fact that I was wrong, the more I would actually get right. And I have seen an improvement with myself since doing this. I have gotten more names right over time. So if you've tried all these techniques and you're still struggling, one thing I want you to focus on is who are you talking to? Because part of this could be a problem of like, you're not being clear of who you're calling. Like you're picking up a phone, you're calling spirit, maybe you're not setting a very clear intention of who you're connecting to. So you always want to make sure that your intention of who is very clear. I have a whole video on this. You could like totally be picking up on a spirit's name, but maybe just like not the right one. Like there could be another guy coming in and you're getting it totally right, but you haven't like clarified, no, I'm reading this person's grandmother and we're trying to get a name for that. Another thing you can do if you're really struggling is try to practice with things you can actually verify, names you can actually verify. So like get into groups with people, practice reading. You can get feedback from people of like, am I right. We got in the group and we did this where I said, okay, everyone's got to guess your partner's, your mom's name, your dad's name, your dad's dad, your dad's mom, like all of it. And it was crazy how many people got so many right. And you were able to verify that with your partner because they were able to tell you their names. One of my favorite ways to do this is if you have Prime. Prime has like an X-ray feature on shows where try to guess the actor's name. Like you might not know who they are, try to guess their name, and you can always pause it and it pulls up like the little X-ray vision of all the actors in the show and you can see if you were right. Anywhere that you go where people wear name tags, this is also a really great option. If you're in a restaurant or the grocery store, you know, you can connect with the person before you like approach them and be like, okay, what would their name be? And you can try to guess, and then when you get closer to them, you can see what their name is. And if you really want to stretch yourself, try practicing when you don't know if you're right. You can't validate that. So like you're walking around trying to guess maybe the models on billboards, or you know, you're in Target and you see like pictures of like people trying to guess. You're never probably going to figure out what their real names are, but you're flexing your muscle of guessing and trying to get that name, not like guessing, but like psychically receiving. You're flexing that muscle day to day because you can come across tons of people you don't know their names. You don't always have to know if it's right because it's not about being right. It's just about practice. So I'm going to force you to practice this right now. Try not to look in the comments. If you have already, I'll try to like hide it. But can you guess my mother's name? So this would be my great-grandmother. My great-grandmother on my mother's side. My mom's mom. You can try to guess her first name or her last name. I'll like hide it in a comment that hopefully you can open and hopefully it won't be ruined for too many people. But yeah, feel it out. Drop it in the comments. I'll let you know if you got it. All right, I hope that these techniques will help you moving forward into the future. Come back, let me know if you do. Let me know if you find out another way that works better. Quick little announcement here too. I'm gearing up to potentially do local classes here in Colorado. If that's of interest to you, please sign up for just like my Colorado newsletter. Even if you're willing to travel, you're welcome to sign up for that. But please sign up for that down below. I'll be able to send you basically emails if I'm doing local stuff. Alrighty guys, thank you so much. Like this video if you found it helpful, and I will see you in my next one. Bye! Once again, I have a shirt that you can't see. I cracked up when I saw this shirt and had to buy it.